everybody. Happy Thursday. My name's Aaron. I'm the co-founder here, managing director at BWG Connect, a giant networking knowledge sharing group. Thanks everybody for joining today. I spend the majority of my time talking to organizations around the biggest pain points that they have and what are they trying to solve for, and then also asking them who's working for you and who's not. And from those conversations, we had a couple of things. One is not only the topics to cover that be incredibly relevant and timely for those in the organization, but also who's actually working and who's not. And so today, this topic that's been coming up over and over again is in the area of B2B. And there's two sides of it. There's the traditional brand side that's realizing a B2B direct-to-consumer site is expensive to ship one-off products, and they're trying to look into a B2B model and how do they roll that out. The other side is the traditional B2B business who's grappling with sometimes a buyer that's getting a little bit older, maybe is a millennial and is looking to purchase more online and less interactive on a person-to-person basis. And so it's had this swelling up of a topic as a whole. So Ethan Given here from the B2B e-commerce agency has come up, is highly recommended from within the network and the partners we have in it. And so invite him on today to kind of walk us through some of those key things. Ethan, I'll kick it over to you. Do you want to do a brief intro on yourself,
Yeah, absolutely.
company? That'd be great. And then we'll
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so excited to be here with you today, Aaron. Always love talking shop and taking questions as well if people have questions or comments. But I'm Ethan Giffen. I'm CEO and founder of the B2B e-commerce agency. I've been helping organizations build and grow digital revenue for almost 30 years. I may look young, but I'm in my 50s here. And my career is very interesting because I started out kind of building websites, got into building some early e-commerce websites, and then went to work for a large 6,000 person organization where I really got into digital revenue generation, CRM, and all of that aspect of things, and then came back to direct to consumer e-commerce. And so as we've seen B2B e-com really start to get shot out of a cannon, it feels very natural for me. And actually where I've really loved being is helping organizations figure out how to create that digital revenue, right? They've got sales teams, they've got all different kinds of channels that they've been working on together. And so I help mid-market organizations that want to either build or figure out how to grow their digital revenue channel.
Yeah, awesome. So, everybody, just a quick reminder, if you have questions along the way, please drop them into the Q&A and we'll answer those as real time as possible. We want us just to be as educational, informational as possible. So don't hesitate, drop questions in the Q&A and we'll get to them. But I guess the question that I would bring up is like, what is this current state? Like it is, you said getting shot out of a cannon, and I agree. All of a sudden in my conversations, instead of once every other month it's coming up 2 to 3 times a week. And
Yeah.
so it's obviously the top of everybody's mind. Like, what is the current state? And then I'd love to pick your brain on where people feel that they're, are they ahead of the curve? Are they behind the curve? Where do you see people falling right now? Common mistakes, all that fun stuff we'll get to. But like current state of B2B.
Oh, the current state. It's exciting but challenging. I think it's exciting because there's a lot of great technology out there, but it's challenging because people don't actually know like what to do or how to go about this many times, and there's no really good playbook for that. We find that most of our conversations start with people that are either extremely interested in building a digital revenue channel and building a B2B e-commerce site, but actually not knowing where to start. Or the other side that we come across very frequently is organizations that built and invested heavily in a system and it's like not performing well. I got a call recently from a couple $100 million company that had done, $150,000 of revenue in the first 9 months through their portal. And they were like, 7 figures into it and not sure like why that was. And it was very clear, the steps that they missed in that. And so, it's really a cool time because we're seeing people, the average 23-year-old entering the workforce today was actually 5 or 6 years old when the iPhone came out. So they've lived their entire kind of teenage and young adult lives having a smartphone, and even the Amazon app right in their pocket, especially for my nieces and nephews in college that are ordering things on their parents' accounts and my brother's accounts all the time, and much to their frustration. But these folks are entering the workforce. And so they're very used to using Amazon and Uber and Target.com and, all those types of things. And they expect some kind of digital experience with the vendors that they work with at work. And it's really hard to kind of shift that mindset. And they really shouldn't shift that mindset because there's a whole lot of reasons why you should go down this path if you haven't. And so, I think over the next 5 years, like when people were literally born with an iPhone or Android phone in their hand, like what is it going to be then, right? What is it going to be when those 23-year-olds are 28, 29, and they're now, managers and directors and VPs and, I think we're going to see a significant shift in that customer behavior. So, I think it's an interesting time. I think there's some great tools and products out there. But I also think that the organizations that don't start to invest and at least do something are going to get left behind, at some point here in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, where do you see most people like getting it wrong? Because you can't do anything, but there's a giant hesitation because I don't know if people don't know step one. And so they're holding back. So in my opinion, one of those things is like you have to do something. But then as you're talking, I'm like, well, maybe not. Maybe you end up 9 months in, 7 figures in, only doing 150 thousand. Like you're a rounding error at that point in time to the
Yeah,
company, and
bad.
then it kind of gets abandoned or said it's not going to work. But like, where do people get it wrong?
Yeah, I think they get it wrong is misalignment. I don't think that they have, I think they treat it like a website project or like, like a project that has a beginning and an end. I think they also just oftentimes it's generally the head of marketing, usually the VP or director of marketing, that's the person to reach out to us 80% of the time, like looking into this. And I think because it's a website, they often just throw it on their lap and they haven't created an overall alignment within the organization. When we do our discoveries, we do a 3-day immersive on-site discovery at our studio in Baltimore. The whole discovery takes about 6 to 8 weeks, but we kick it off with this 3-day session, and we really push for the CEO to attend at least the first day and a half. And they'll I had we did one in January where the CEO was like, I don't want to come, and I'm like, listen, our intent here, you're $100 million company. Like we want to get this to be 10 or 15% of your revenue flowing through this channel. Like, isn't like a 10, 15, $20 million revenue channel worth a day and a half of your time to come like set the tone that this is important? Because then we've got to create alignment between the sales team, the marketing team, the operations team, the finance team, and the IT team, because these projects kind of touch all of those aspects. So where people kind of misstart is they start by picking a technology before they've figured out what their, like what the program is going to be, and then not creating that alignment in the process of doing it.
Then it's interesting. Yeah, because I think you're right. Because when you're inundated out there, it is first, I'm going to even select just the platform that I'm going to use. Right. I think a lot of the times where, on the traditional direct to consumer side, people will just immediately jump straight to Shopify and just go ahead and roll it out. And so when they flip that to a B2B side, it is, okay, let me go pick the platform and then let me go find an integrator or a web dev firm that's going to go execute, as opposed to, okay, well, let's first map out the business. What are you doing? What is the goals? What do you want to achieve? What is the structure? How's your sales force structured? Are they using it today? That's why, as you're talking, I'm kind of rolling through conversations that I've had. It's like, well, let's get that in place first, and then let's go look at, you know, hey, what's the right platform for you?
But yeah. I mean, and that's a common way. And so, I wrote a book with a bunch of stories called Closing the Digital Revenue Gap. We'll touch on more in that like towards the end. But, in the book, I've got 10 different stories around all the types of ways that these get out of alignment. And one of the ways, is people picking the tech first. Maybe the CEO saw Harley from Shopify on Jim Cramer and said, hey, well, let's try this thing. And they end up using not Shopify Plus or B2B, but just like off the shelf Shopify, like and try to put something together, or they're already on WordPress. And maybe the head of IT goes, well, we could just do WooCommerce for free. And they try to, throw some things together and try to make that work. But it doesn't because they kind of have done those steps out of order. I had one of our international clients with a U.S. division asked me to go speak at their annual organizational kickoff retreat, and like the sales team, I could just see like the fear in the sales team's eyes as I started talking about this. And that's a common challenge as well, is letting the sales team not letting the sales team be a part of that conversation, because somebody will also say during the process, oh man, we can bring that commission back to the house and we're gonna get rid of our salespeople. And that's bullshit. Like, pardon my French. Like, but like, that's like insane. You actually need the sales team engaged in this process. They're the feet on the street. They're the ones that can heavily influence customer usage. They can give you feedback on what the customers are saying. They can give you feedback on what they think is missing, from the sales process. And so the net effect of that, and we've thrown in about 10 different things here, but is that friction, right? Is it actually hard to buy from you, right? So, that's another part of this, is like, how can I figure out what it's actually like to buy from our organizations? Sometimes it's really painful.
Yeah. So John drops a question. Just to remind us, others who've joined, any questions you have, drop in the Q&A. We'll answer them pretty much real time. So John drops in here: what strategies can drive B2B customers to discover and adopt new products online, given that most incremental growth today in my business comes from sales reps rather than digital channels? And to
Yeah.
add, not trying to remove sales reps, they'll get a commission regardless. But if a customer uses the digital channel, looking for ways to get them to discover online.
Yeah, so I'm frequently giving presentations to groups, and I will say, like, starting out with that story of, how the 5-year-old, when the iPhone started, now they're like, now they're 23 going into work. I think, you can't be Amazon, right? Like a mid-market organization, even an enterprise organization can't be Amazon. They do more innovation in an hour than some companies will do in 10 years, right? Like, so, but you have to start to be like, how can I think like them a bit, right? And so, B2B can be hard. Sometimes there's a set catalog or set of SKUs that they can only pick from, right? So that's a challenging situation. But there's a lot of great product discovery tools that are available for the mid-market that can plug into modern commerce systems, like BigCommerce, and allow for additional product discovery. We leverage Klaviyo, which is the king of direct to consumer email marketing, but we've created and customized Klaviyo to leverage that for B2B marketing, right? Like for a clothing retailer, Klaviyo can tell you, if they figure out what piece of clothing someone buys first, they can actually start to stitch together the data and tell you what product they're going to buy second. And you can start to promote that product to them, before they've gotten there, right? And we want to leverage those same types of things in B2B now differently. We don't want to drive them crazy, right? But we want to leverage data and all of those kind of tools, product discovery tools, and make sure that people are getting a well-rounded experience with this.
Yeah, I'm also thinking from the exposure standpoint is, on a website, you think about Amazon now, right? Everybody's on Amazon. You type in um, product search and you get that result, but you're also shown multiple other products all around the page. they've so accustomed us to, we've become so accustomed to it that we don't even find it offensive. We're like, oh, that's just how websites work.
Yeah.
And I think about the product discovery, the search engine, the hey, customers also bought, or hey, this is also driving sales. With a website, which is different than just the one-on-one connection, you actually put the product in front of them in mass or multiple, and you can test and learn to see how people interact with different spots around the page, and then click on those products as well, and you can get it right in front of them for product discovery. A lot easier than it is waiting for phone call, whatever.
It's a broad, and John, I don't know your industry, like where you're at, but it's also a broad question, right? If you're selling fasteners or nuts and bolts, the user interface for that is going to be much different than, say, if you're selling bulk clothing, or like the B2B is such a wide phrase in terms of e-commerce that it's everything from manufacturers selling t-shirt blanks to their end customers, all the way down to people with thousands of nuts and bolts and fasteners, and and trying to figure out how to display those parts to people. So there's different strategies for all of that, depending upon like what you're trying to accomplish. I one of my big hobbies is music, right? I'm a DJ. I've been a DJ for 30 years. And I had a great experience recently with Guitar Center, where I looking at some new speakers. Hopefully my wife isn't listening to the webinar, but looking at some new speakers, and added them to my cart to see what the cost would be. And I've got a sales rep there, and he reached out to me and knew that I had added those to my cart, right? So having strategies where your sales rep gets notified if a certain amount of cart gets added that might be abnormal, or if somebody's placed their second order or first order. So there's a lot of things to think about, like when you're rolling this out, to figure out how to increase that product discovery.
Yeah. What do people get wrong? The platform is so important, right? Like, what do people get wrong when choosing or evaluating a platform? Because in my mind, what you're just saying is the functionality. It's not drastically different, but it is inherently different as a different driver than the traditional direct consumer website or just an informational website. What do people miss or get wrong as they're evaluating, what platform to go with?
Yeah. And so like we have a digital maturity like stages that we go from 1 to 5. And so depending upon where you are in that and what your end goal is, will help lead on the platform side. But it's like things like, do you need quoting? Do you have, multi-tier catalog that goes down to the branch level? Um, do you need punch outs, right? And like all there's a lot of different things like that that kind of flow into that conversation. Do you need approvals? Like, not everybody's a little bit different organizationally, right? And so understanding um up front, what are the features that you really need, like that should take some time to look at. But it's also, how willing are you to create change within your organization? Because let's say you've got a kind of a non-traditional SKU format, or something in your catalog that there's no logic to your pricing, or like how willing are you to actually kind of adjust based upon the technology to get you where you want to go, right? And I'm not saying you should give up your secret sauce, but sometimes in businesses there's a lot of legacy things that like Uncle Bob came up with 35 years ago that have like stuck and like have never been questioned or challenged, right? Or only one person knows how to apply markup to the catalog, right? Like, because it's so convoluted in terms of, it's not just the cost, it's it's tariffs, and and any other kind of fees that go along with that.
Yeah. So that you mentioned this digital maturity, like, do you do that assessment for companies? Because I know there's a lot of people would just like, there's a couple of standpoints where they would want it to happen is one is they do personally want to know where they're at. And the other one is to show the organization like, hey, I know you guys think you're forward thinking, but 8 out of 10 companies are at stage 3,
Yeah.
and we're at stage 1. And, I just, from the being in corporate America for a long time and having a B2B site, I mean, there's some things that have to be answered, and you're always constantly trying to explain to people why you need to get to the next level and where you're currently at, and what does even the next level mean? Because at that point in time, you're going to have to usually a lot of times go ask for some kind of investment. Like,
Yeah.
this is where I'm at today. This is where I want to go. This is the results we're going to get. Do you guys step in and do that evaluation? Like you do
Yeah. So we start every before we'll even begin any type of like process of pricing, we'll do a 3-week diagnostic workshop with everybody that contacts us. And that's non-negotiable. And what that does is it's a series of interviews and surveys that go out to various people within the organization that allows us to come in and figure out like where they're at, what are going to be like, are there any technology roadblocks? Is there any ERP roadblocks? Let's look at the catalog. Let's kind of do a quick 3-week evaluation of all the sum of the parts of this. And we'll kind of give you a very honest assessment and say, hey, these are the things that that we're going to have to figure out how to get past organizationally. They're more psychological than they are complex. These are the your ERP is just not going to work with this. Like we try to give a very honest assessment of that. We've got enough kind of bruises and scrapes from these projects over the last 20 years that um we want to be honest up front of where you're actually at. And so and it might just be, hey, we need to do a little mini project to get your catalog up to snuff before we go down this path. Or like we're very specific in we deliver a full report and presentation then at the end of that, and people are really excited to see the results of that.
Yeah, when it gets to the platform selection side, we do a lot of events in the B2B space, and commerce, formerly big commerce, they come up all the time. Is it just flexibility? Like I'd love to hear your thoughts on that platform. Is it just it's that much more adaptable to business? It's kind of what I hear, but I'd love to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts on it as well.
Well, I think it's a good solution for people that um, want less technical debt, that want to get going a little bit faster, but commerce has invested heavily in their B2B edition of their platform. They continue to invest in that and add features and functionality to that. And so if you're a good fit for that, then it's a great platform for you. There are some instances where, it may be like not 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 always the best fit. And so we try to be, honest with that. But we think if everything lines up from a commerce end of that, it's a great platform for you, and you can go faster and get live quicker. And we think their interface and everything is really great. So we're big fans of it, and we've been working on it since 2014. At this point, so we kind of know the ins and outs of how to get the most out of it.
Who, just a reminder though, so we get about halfway through here. If you have questions along the way, drop in the Q&A. We'll keep getting to them as we go. The next question is around who owns it. Who do you find owning this? I know earlier you mentioned a lot of times you have a marketing team that's reaching out to you. And so would love to hear your thoughts about who owns this at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so we actually have we want to be transparent with our clients. And we really like it's a core tenet of us that they need to learn in the process of working with us, right? They need to learn and mature and grow in terms of digital revenue over their time of working with us. And so we believe it's a team. And so, there might be a point of contact for the project, which we always like, but we think once this is live, that there are some kind of specific stages in terms of there should always be a pilot stage to pilot, a handful of early customers before you roll this out and activate it with your bigger customer base. We also believe that you should have monthly and quarterly and an annual meetings with a steering committee around this, and we facilitate those meetings as part of our ongoing engagements, right? We think about this as like a real digital channel, and it needs input from marketing, from sales, from IT, from ops, and from finance, because any of those things, if finance isn't going to approve new customers fast enough and make them wait 3 or 4 weeks, right, it's going to die on the vine, right? If sales isn't helping to encourage their customers to go in and place their first, second, third orders, then it's going to fail. If IT, doesn't open up like the things that need to be opened up, right, then it's going to fail. And if ops can't actually ship the products and communicate and have provide customer service, then it's going to fail. And so, we think it's a team that should meet, at least quarterly, for a half day, and then we think it's an annual one day annually to sit down and have a mini confab around it.
Now, who's the normally like the initial champion? I know you said marketing usually reaches
Yeah.
out, but is it sales? I mean, it seems like it should be sales. I do know, like we said, we've done multiple dinners on this topic because it's hot, and usually the thing that comes out is the sales side, right? So who's typically the
Well,
initial
so
champion
from
that gets
our
it?
experience, like 8 out of 10 times, it's the head of marketing because they're kind of the hip one in the organization, right? That like understands like, a little bit of AI and understands CRM and, so they kind of send them out on a journey to look at this. If it's reactive and there's some existing technology that's failing, then it's been the head of IT for us. It's surprising, sales, I think, is always generally just focused on selling. Like their quotas continue to grow. They continue to have like huge amounts of pressure on them to kind of, especially with public companies, to kind of hit their number. And so they're kind of heads down looking at these kind of things. It can be sales if, sometimes maybe a specific customer requires this. Like, so we get calls all the time where it's like, hey, we supply this company and they told us if we don't create a system with punch outs, then we're like, they're not going to buy from us anymore. Right. And we got to get that up and running. And it's $25 million account. We got to get this up and running. And so, it's a little bit different. But if it's something that folks are considering, usually sometimes it even comes tell the CEO tells the marketing person to kind of reach out and get with us.
What do you find is like a step one for brands right now? Like before, like what do they walk away from, and what is a quick evaluation that they would do before they even would engage with you? Like what would that look like?
Well, I think, um, some of the things like the hard stops or the catalog. Do you have an existing catalog, right? Like, what does your catalog look like? Is it like public facing? Do you have a website? Do you have a non-transactional like catalog website currently, or is it a PDF catalog? What does that look like? And then what does your ERP and CRM look like? And like, so those are generally where we would start, but it's with the catalog. Like, what do you think you'd really grade your catalog? If you looked at a traditional e-tailer and looked at the photos and the specifications and all the information, that's we call that stage one, as having a non-transactional website with a catalog.
Do you see a lot of questions popping up around like discoverability in the LLMs? And while you're talking about this catalog piece, it's what comes top to mind because these LLMs are scouring for content, for readable
Yeah.
content in most cases. They're kind of skipping over the images right now. And so when you're talking about that catalog and you're saying a PDF versus written, like, yeah, like I don't know if you're seeing an impact there on the B2B side, but it's definitely starting to pop up
Right.
on the traditional
Yeah.
direct to consumer side.
It's an interesting subject. AI is the hottest topic right now. Like I could go, you know, put on an AI course and people will just be lined up to, Claude came to town in Baltimore here last week and my EO chapter you couldn't get in. It was waitlisted beyond belief for this thing. But at the end of the day, like often like people aren't quite ready like to go down that path yet. Like there's a lot of talk about agentic e-commerce and the organizations that I'm talking to that are 100 200 300 million can't even figure out like how to get like specs in there for their catalog like together, right? So it's like, man, the problems that we encounter are so like like far removed from agentic e-commerce yet that like that they can't even figure out how to get a simple catalog going. Now we'll use AI. Like I think like AI has been fantastic to help in the catalog update and augmentation and enrichment process, and that has saved a ton of cycles, around that. But somebody still has to go review all of that and make sure it's correct. But I am call me crazy, but it's like, how is an organization that still writes sales slips like on paper, and like gonna get to agentic e-commerce? Like they've got to go through a process of like getting to that. We call that stage 5. So our intent is, how do we get somebody from a stage 1, which is just having a simple catalog site? What we see as stage 2 is somebody with this basic wholesale site where it's just kind of, they've used a Shopify or a WooCommerce, and they don't have price books or quotes or anything complex, and it requires a credit card. And to get them all the way up to stage 4 of having a buyer portal, a private buyer portal.
Because I do believe the rate at which it's changing, I- you can't put this off anymore.
No,
You
no,
just can't, because we will get to agent shopping obviously before
yeah,
there, but it's going to be just being discovered in the LLMs. Like, doesn't matter if you've got agentic on the back end built out if you're not even showing up in the
right.
LLMs, which everybody's pushing, by the way. Like if you're on the app, Amazon's pushing it, Google's pushing it, like everybody's pushing it. But that's how a lot of search is being done. And if your catalog right now, like, I love where you start with that. I want to say it's simple. It's a lot of work, but it's simple to do. You have to get it there. Like you
You've got
have
to
to
get
be
there.
showing up, because people are using it, and the rate of adoption is through the roof. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. That's what it is.
Now, listen, if we can get that catalog to a great place and you've got, you know, STL files or CAD files or spec sheets and all these things attached to that, it's fantastic for AI to come in and look at all that. And quite frankly, even with, some of the site search providers like HawkSearch that we work with, they're able to ingest all this interesting content now, in terms of, and we layer that into big commerce. And so, I think you've got to figure out, like, it's going back to, I was an old school SEO guy back in 1999, right? In 2000. Like you couldn't rank for something if you didn't have a page on your website of content that like equaled that search query. And it's the same thing with AI. Like you can't get mentioned for something that you don't have publicly available. So that's part of the process of this, is getting it all together and out there and figuring out what makes the most sense for that. It's still the early days of that. We don't even know how all that is ingested and looked at. It's like the early days of SEO. So there's a lot of information and a lot of thought process going into that. But a lot of crowd thought going into like, hey, how do we show up in AI? But all of that is important.
Yeah. Um, it's going to be here faster than we all think, which is crazy, because it just setting, historically, when you look like how fast did people adopt the iPhone, how people did they adopt Amazon, how quickly did they adopt direct to consumer, and then you lay that on top of TikTok, and then you put it on top of AI. It just keeps getting, the timelines just keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and you have to be prepped for it. Um, Pain points that people run into, or other things that you usually get asked that haven't popped up today.
Yeah, I think the question is, how to how to think about a project like this. What's the minimum we could do? Another pain point is, trying to get every single product in a catalog that you may never have sold before, live on a system like this, right? That's a pain point. Like, let's figure out, let's take your top, 10 or 20 customers and get the products that they buy frequently online and get them piloted in the system and figure out where the pain points are and make sure it's smooth sailing, as you're continuing to evolve. Um, and then what is the realistic time frame like to do something like this? And we really think it takes about 3 years from zero to kind of being in a full stage where you're like maybe in different marketplaces and you're optimizing and you're really leveraging it, for growth.
3 years. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, again, it takes you. Listen,
yeah,
like,
it's all the stuff you got to tie into. It's the training, it's the acceptance, the connections to all, like you're saying, the CDP, the ERP, the CRM, the pricing.
and we have a 3-year life cycle that we call the B2B e-commerce blueprint, right? And generally, the first 12 months are usually picking picking an agency, picking an SI to work with, going through discovery, building it, and then hopefully piloting with your first handful of customers. It usually then takes a full year to get your customer base. Once you've piloted and you feel good about like where the system is, then it takes a full year to activate your customer base to get them going in there. How are we going to get everybody to place their first order? We need them to place their first 3 orders in the system. And usually by that point, then they're kind of hooked. Right. And so that takes a year to get all the sales team, to get all the people, to have it just become ingrained and a part of everybody's just daily conversations and vernacular that they're having. And then year three is like, how do we optimize and really grow? How do we grow that? And so that's what we think about 3 year wise. Now, it doesn't take 3 years to build the system, but it takes 3 years to really to go from a company that might get orders over a text message or on a notepad or in a spreadsheet and become like, hey, we've got a real digital revenue channel within the organization. We've got a steering committee and we're tracking those metrics, on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis.
No, this is awesome. Others, if you have questions, drop them in. I don't have others that are in there right now. So Ethan, just to say, like, other key things like you think as we kind of get to the end here. Other obviously, if you have questions, drop in the Q&A. We'll
Yeah.
get to them. But other things that are top of mind as we kind of get to the
Well,
end here.
yeah, I do want to mention my book, Closing the Digital Revenue Gap. If anybody's interested in a free copy that's on the webinar today, if this resonates with you, it's a very quick and easy read. It's a compact book. You can read it on an airplane ride. We go through 10 kind of common challenges that manufacturers and distributors see. There's a couple of stories for each of those, why it's important to think about. And if you find yourself in that position, like some things to ponder, as you're trying to find your way out of it. And so, we'll follow up after if you want a free copy. But, I think the thing for people to realize is that you're not alone in this, right? You may have some unique business challenges, but there are thousands of manufacturers and distributors that just don't know where to start, or they've done something and they haven't figured out how to properly get it activated with their customer base. And there are ways and solutions to create a repeatable, trackable system within your organization to do that.
Yeah, awesome. Just a couple people commenting on the book. Yeah, we will. We'll just send out an email connection
Yeah.
to everybody, connecting you to Ethan, and then you get him your address,
Yeah.
and he can ship you the book. That might be the
It's
easiest way.
non-technical. It's just stories and things, trials and tribulations from the road that we've seen kind of over and over, from
Yeah.
doing these projects.
Yeah, awesome. And I would encourage anybody to have a follow-up conversation with Ethan and his team. They're all around fantastic people and great friends to the network as a whole. Also, I mean, from my side, I'd love to have a conversation with you as well. Just to pick your brain on what are the other topics you're looking at? What are you struggling with? If you need any partner recommendations, and that could be anything from like this case, the B2B to could be Amazon to TikTok to Reddit or the
Mm.
LLMs. More than happy to just open my network up to anybody that's
I,
on the line today.
yeah,
Um,
I
well,
love
Ethan,
it.
that was an absolute blast. I don't have any other questions that have popped up in here, so great time to give everybody the gift of time back. So, Ethan, thanks again so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And
Thank
thanks
you.
everybody for the great questions. With that, we're going to wrap it up. Everybody, take care, stay safe. Look forward to having you at a future event. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you. Bye bye.